Hi, I'm Lauren Helfer. Today we're going to start talking about digital interactive notebooks. This will be the first of 3 lessons that will help get you ready to use digital notebooks with your students, in person or in a virtual setting. Let's begin. Okay, here we go. I've opened a fresh new PowerPoint slide. PowerPoint is my favorite program to create the backgrounds for my digital interactive notebooks. There's a couple of reasons for this. One reason is PowerPoint is a little bit more powerful than Google Slides, but you can do this in Google Slides as well. It's also much easier to export the files when we're finished from PowerPoint than it is from Google Slides. And the last and final reason is that in PowerPoint, if for some reason I needed to later use my notebook with my students in a Microsoft program such as PowerPoint, starting it out in PowerPoint helps it come back from Google Slides in a little bit easier method to use in a Microsoft program. So I find that if you have PowerPoint, I would recommend starting out in PowerPoint. If you don't have PowerPoint to use for your school, then you can start it in Google Slides. There are instructions in the handout that will help you along with that, but for the demonstration, I'm going to show you how to do everything in PowerPoint. So our first step that we want to do is pick a size for our notebook. My preference is usually to use 8.5 by 11, the same size as a normal sheet of copy paper, because if I ever did need to print out anything from here, it would already be the right size and I could print it out just a little bit more easily. It also helps remind me when I'm making things to help keep it a uniform size. I don't always create my notebooks in 8.5 by 11 though. Sometimes I do choose to use a wider angle, wider size page, especially if I know that there's going to be a lot of digital tools that I'm going to want to place on the slide for the students to use. That way I can use part of the slide for the digital tools and part of the slide for the note taking. You can also place your digital tools actually off the slide later on, and we'll go about that in lesson 2. But for today's lesson, I'm going to use an 8.5 by 11 page. So to change the size of the slide in PowerPoint, you go to Design and then to Slide Size. There's 2 standard sizes already on here, standard and widescreen, but I prefer to go to Custom Slide Size and then to change the width to 11 and the height to 8.5 or 8.5, so that way my slide is the same size as a normal sheet of paper. I find that this size also fits well for students that are using the notes on a tablet device like an iPad or a Chromebook. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove the pre-populated areas on here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to think about what type of a material I'm going to be presenting to my students. What do I want it to look like? What type of concept is it? Is it something that has steps, like step 1, step 2? It's very sequential. Is it something that's a cycle, like maybe the life cycle of a butterfly? Is it something that's more free form? Is it something that I'm going to want them to illustrate and put pictures in? So first thing you got to do is sort of think about, what are these notes going to look like? And one of the most fun things about a digital notebook is you can make it really colorful from the beginning. So when you're making paper-based handouts, usually you want to keep them black and white so that they're easy to copy, because who has all that colored ink? But when you're digital, you can use all the fun colors, all the fun graphics, and you don't have to worry about the idea that it won't be able to be copied, because you're not usually going to make copies of a digital notebook. So I'm going to go to Insert, and I've actually going to go to this device. I've downloaded some free images from Facebook, excuse me. So to get started, we're going to choose some fun and colorful images to start the format for our interactive notebook. So to do that, I go to Insert, Pictures, this device, and I have saved some fun backgrounds and clip art from one of my favorite clip art artists on Teachers Pay Teachers, and both of these sets are free. So you could go and grab these as well to make notebooks. I love these. They're so colorful. So I'm going to pick one that I want to start with. You'll notice it doesn't fill the whole screen. So you have a couple options here. One thing that's great with slides is it doesn't matter if things hang off the edge. When we go to export it later on in this lesson, the things that are hanging off the edge will just get cropped off. So don't worry if things are hanging off the edge. So I'm going to expand it to make it fit the whole screen. Notice how I expanded it. I expanded it by one of the corners, not by the side. When you stretch things by the side, it can make them distorted. This one doesn't look too bad stretched by the side because it's a very plain pattern, but sometimes if you stretch by the side, it will make a very strange effect on your art. So I'm going to think about what I'm wanting to do with my students. So I have some notes, and right now they're just a PDF copy. I don't have them in a digital, well, they're digital because they're a PDF, but they're not digital as in I can share them using Google Classroom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this other set of work. This is actually a free interactive notebook that I have on my Teachers Pay Teachers store. But notice it's just a PDF. It's not one of the ones that I've gotten time yet to go in and change to digital. So I want to add part of this activity for my students to work on in their digital notebook. So a great tool that I love is called Greenshot. When you install it on your computer, and it is free, it's open software, so you can use it at school, at home. There's no copyright limitations on it. But what it does is when you push the print screen button on your keyboard, print screen is usually to the top right of your keyboard. It just says PRTSC, usually, print screen abbreviated. Is when you click that, you can take a little snag of part of your screen. So I can grab a little snag of my little screen capture, copy it to the clipboard, and now when I go into my notebook, I've copied it to clipboard, I can paste it in and add it to the instructions for what I want my students to work on. So now I have this area of work that I can have my students work on. Other things you can do, you can add areas where you're going to later have your students type. So I can just use the shape tools to add different shapes. You can change the colors to make them look fun. There's all sorts of different tools that you can experiment with to make your notebook fun, to make it appealing to you and to your students, since y'all will be using it a lot. You can add directions in here of what you want them to do. I prefer to use a text box. So I can say, something like, tell me what you know about the order of operations. And I can think about, well, what else could make this look more fun and appealing for my students? Maybe I want to add some fun artwork to it. So I can go, again, back to Insert. The same artist that had these great background papers, digital paper, have She had some fun free school-related clip art, which I loved. So you can go and find, there's tons of free clip art that you can use for commercial and for personal or classroom use on Teachers Pay Teachers. So you don't have to even spend any money to make your own notebooks. Just, go and search and you'll find lots of things that you can get for free. So maybe I want to put this little picture. Let's go with the backpack. And oh wow, it's huge. So let's think about how we're going to make this shape fit in with our work. What I'm not gonna do, look what happens if I do this side. Does that still look good? No. You always want to resize your clip art by pulling at one of the corners because it keeps it proportional so that it doesn't look all stretched and weird. And it's really fun to be able to overlap a little bit. So I'm gonna put it down here out of the way where it's not in the way of anything, but it gives the notebook a little bit more of a digital appeal so that the students, stay engaged and it's visually appealing. You don't want them to go in and think, oh, this looks boring. They go in and it's colorful and it's a little bit more fun looking. They'll be more engaged with their work. So we have this ready. This side's good. You can add multiple slides to your notebook. So I like to add slides. I just go to Home, New Slide, and I always pick blank so that I don't have to worry about what's on there. Now, if you want to use some of the built-in information in PowerPoint, some of the built-in themes or colors, you can, of course, use those. I like to use my own just so I can make it completely customized. So this time, maybe I want the students to do a bit more writing. So I see that there's these fun clipboard looking pieces. So another thing that you can do when you're making a digital notebook is think about places where you can have your students write on top of it. So I can actually, when I add my interactive layer that's going to be in lesson 2, I can have my students write on top of this. Another thing that I could do is I could go and I could get another snag from this PDF notebook. So this is a great thing to do if you have a ton of printable resources, but you're not doing printable right now, you're only doing digital. Check the author's terms of use, but often if it's just for use in your classroom, they'll let you do things like this. I know I do as a teacher author, allow people to use the products in this way as long as they're using it for their own students in their own classroom. So in that case, I can put that little snag on top of my clipboard and it looks like it's right there on the page with it. And then I can leave them space to show their work and to explain how they're solving the problem down below. Again, maybe I want to add another fun background. I can do that again. I'm going to go back and grab some more digital paper. I love yellow. Yellow is one of my favorite colors. So I'm going to go add a yellow background to this. Stretch it out. Okay. So I have this empty space right here. This will be a great place to store some digital tools in our finished notebook. So what I'm going to do so that I'll remember where to place them, where my idea was to put them, I'm going to insert a shape right there. This is a fun tool. When you want something to match exactly, go to your shape fill or whichever color chooser you are on, choose eyedropper, and then you can go and it will let you select any of the other colors on that page to color your item. So I'm going to choose this gray color and give it a black background. And I'm going to add a little text box that says digital tools. Center that. Make it a little bit bigger. And then when we're making our digital overlay in lesson 2, this will be a great spot where I can add in some digital tools for my students to be able to use while they're answering this word problem. A couple more things that you might want to do, let's make another slide, is if you're doing, say, a science notebook or a social studies or even a language arts notebook, occasionally a math notebook, you may want to put in actual pictures of what you're talking about. So I'm going to stick with science since that's one of the subjects that I teach. I'm going to go online onto Google and I want to find a picture of the life cycle of a butterfly. Oops, it would help if I spelled it correctly. Of a butterfly. So I see some images here. Now remember, when you're using things in your classroom only, you have a lot more leeway with finding images on Google. If you're using anything where you're going to be sharing it with a lot of people, or if you are going to be possibly selling it or even offering it for free on Teachers Pay Teachers, you do need to be very careful about just going online and searching Google. That can get you into a lot of trouble. So this image right here, I can go and copy it. Looks great. And you can add an image into your notebook to help explain a concept. Since I don't own this image and I just found it on Google and I do commercial work, I am not going to save it in here. I just wanted to show you how you could do that. Another thing that you can do that can make some fun new sort of areas is you can overlap your shapes. So maybe I'm talking about the life cycle of the butterfly and I want to illustrate the 4 steps, but I want to put the numbers in a fun shape. So I'm going to go to shape fill and I don't want it to have any fill. I'm going to choose no fill. On Google Slides, you would choose transparent or none. So the fill is empty, but if I copy this image, now I have 2 and I can overlap them a little bit. And it makes sort of a fun, funky design that makes it just a little bit more unique. So I can move those around. If you want to move them all at once, you can drag a box around them and it will grab all of them. And you can do things here. I can add 4 of them so that my students can label each part, copy paste of the life cycle of a butterfly. So when we have all our slides ready to be part of our notebook, not the digital tools and not the part where our students are actually going to do the work, but our background sort of base images of our notebook are ready, we're going to save this in a special way. First, we're going to save it just as a slideshow, regular PowerPoint file, but we're also going to go to File, and we are going to save it again, Save As. We're going to switch the file type from PowerPoint presentation to JPEG files. JPEG is a type of image file, and we will use this image file to add into our Google Slides document. So I'm going to save. It'll ask which slides do I want to export. In this case, I want to export all of the slides. And then it will tell me that each of the slides has been saved. And now it's made a little folder where it has all those files inside of a folder called Notebook Example, because that's what I named my notebook. So our last step in the preparation of the background images for our file, so we are going to open a fresh new Google Slides document. And I don't need the theme, so I'm going to close that out. Now I just have my plain ordinary slide. Well, do you remember how we changed the size of our slide in PowerPoint? We're going to do the same thing here in Google Slides. In Google Slides, to change the size of the slide, you'll go to File and Page Setup. Here on the drop-down menu, you can choose different pre-made sizes. 2 of these match the ones in PowerPoint, or you can choose custom. I'm going to choose custom, and I'm going to use the same dimensions that I used for my slide in PowerPoint. This is important so that when we add our background images, they're not stretched. So now my slide is the same dimensions as the slide I made in PowerPoint. So I'm going to, once again, I'm going to get rid of the extra information that they've put as placeholders on the slide. And I'm just going to have my background. So I go here to background, choose image. I'm going to browse to find my images. So here they are, saved for me by PowerPoint. You can see them with their little thumbnails right there. Select the first one, and when you open it, it is placed in the background of the file. This is really important because if you'll notice, when I click on it, I can't accidentally change any of the parts that are part of the background of the notebook. This way, when your students are typing or doing things with the notebook, they won't accidentally move parts that you need to stay there. I can do that with each slide. Let's go over it again. I'm going to add another slide, new slide, and get rid of the extra. Again, I'm going to go to background, choose image, browse, and I'm going to choose one of my pictures that I exported from PowerPoint. Let's do our last one more time for review. Slide, new slide, get rid of the placeholders. We're going to go to background, choose image, browse so that we can find our images, and I'm going to include that last image. Now I have the background images ready for my interactive notebook. You'll notice that in each one, the pieces that I added in PowerPoint are not changeable. This is really important so that way when your students are working, they can't accidentally delete some of the information and then not be able to use their notebook. In our next lesson, we're going to go over how to add the interactive tool layer on top so that your students can interact with the notes as close to possible as how they would be interacting as if they had a paper notebook. Also, there's actually some ways that they are going to be able to interact with a digital notebook that they cannot do with a paper-based notebook. And we'll talk about that in our next lesson. See you then.